And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balestrieri. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. Today, we're going to be discussing the Patriots offense. Just like in our previous episode, we went kind of, guy by guy, position by position, talking about the Patriots defense, what our expectations were, what we really liked, what we were concerned about. We're going to be doing the same kind of format today. But before we start, I would like to just go ahead and say, please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. It keeps us high in the podcast ranking so other Patriots fans can find us. Now, Steve, before we start the show, my man, and I want to get into the DeAndre Hopkins stuff before we start breaking down the offense. But first, how you doing today?
Doing okay. Getting back into the podcasting realm elsewhere. I guested this morning with Claire and Murph on One Patriot Place. So we were talking about a lot of the same stuff you and I will discuss, but they had different takes on things, which is always nice to get a different perspective.
Right, and I know Claire's perspective on a lot of things, which is tight end related. so I have no problem. I have no problem with that because I know she loves her tight ends, and we have certainly some tight end things to talk about today. I would say I'm looking forward to what we've kind of seen and read and heard, given just the very limited minicamp stuff. But we're going to hold that thought for now. Before we get to that, Steve, let's talk about the DeAndre Hopkins news. And I know that this is a little bit of a polarizing topic for some Patriots fans. There's a lot of, I would say the majority, or I would say over 50% are probably pro signing him. I don't want to speak for everybody, but that would be my just kind of, guesstimate based on my social media feeds. And then I would say there's also a decent size that would say that they're against signing him, like our other host Russ Goldman. So I know he's not for and I don't want to speak for Russ, but I know that from Russ's perspective, he doesn't like that number one receiver that demands the ball, and he wants kind of more of a team guy. And like I said, I don't want to speak for Russ, but I feel like that's a fair representation of his view. So let me get your take, Steve. Obviously DeAndre Hopkins, he started his tour. He's going to do several different teams he's visiting with. He was with the Titans. He's apparently been in talks with potentially the Bills, potentially the Chiefs. There's been a couple other teams rumored in there. The Patriots are in the mix. We're recording this show Wednesday, June 14th. Supposedly he's visiting with the Patriots today and tomorrow. At least that's what the report is. Give me your thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins. Are you for him or against it?
Well, you and I talked about this on the show a couple of months ago when, the offseason was first beginning, and I was against it. I was like, they don't really need DeAndre Hopkins. Could they use him? Absolutely. But I was kind of against it at the time. I've kind of changed my mind a little bit on that. Not that I think it's such a glaring need, because I think they're pretty good at wide receiver. Now, if you add DeAndre Hopkins, they go from pretty good to very good, I think, because, you have him. He's been very productive his whole career. He's had some trouble the last few years with injuries, but, he brings that dynamic element to your wide receiver room, and he's just going to draw so much coverage away from your other guys. And you have some pretty good playmakers there. You have Kendrick Bourne, you have Juju Smith-Schuster. We're expecting big things out of Tyquan Thornton this year. Now all of a sudden your wide receiver room looks a lot better. And with your two tight ends, Gesicki and Henry, I think you're looking at an offense that will be able to, pick and choose where they want to create a mismatch. So I'm kind of on this thing right now. I'm still not sure that he's going to sign with the Patriots. I just have the feeling he's biding his time and he wants to see what's out there, which, that's his right, and he's earned that right. So I just kind of have the feeling he's going to go elsewhere. But in the same token, I would be really curious to see how he, would ignite this offense, because I think he would add that extra element to it.
Right. And I would say, too, that for one, I have no problem with him taking his time. This is his first time as an unrestricted free agent in his entire career. He's been traded around, and he's obviously signed extensions and things like that, but he's never really had the opportunity to, explore options. And at 31, I mean, this is probably, I mean, unless it's like a one and done type situation, this could potentially be his last team and his last opportunity to either cash in, try to win a ring, or accomplish whatever he wants to accomplish, right? That's from him personally. From a Patriots standpoint, I'm for it. I do think that I don't know if there's any necessarily risk involved. I respect, ESPN's Mike Reese tremendously. I've complimented him. He's actually been a mentor of mine for a long, long time, and he's just one of the nicest guys of all time. And I say all that to say this: that I thought it was interesting that in his Sunday notes, which yours on PatsFans.com are always a great read, and so is Mike's on ESPN. And I thought that it was interesting that he brought up kind of the locker room aspect of a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, where we saw the clip after the Patriots played the Cardinals this previous season of Bill Belichick and DeAndre kind of showing some mutual admiration and a respect to each other about what they've brought to the games. And Mike's point was that even though Bill might, respect him and want the player, but he also should consider, the locker room element, because DeAndre Hopkins is one of those guys that's really not a big practice guy. He doesn't really like to practice. He kind of saves it all for Sunday. And some people have some kind of, some people don't mind that. Some people think it's an issue. I think Mike's point was, how is that going to be looked at, by other guys, here? I still am for it, because I think that, given what they have right now, and obviously there's some lower end roster guys, but your more top end roster guys in no particular order are Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton, Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that if you were to slot DeAndre Hopkins in above that kind of knocks everyone down a peg. And I think that you're starting to it starts to kind of make sense from a role standpoint. Now, you could talk me into, I still think they can be a productive group without him. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's a must-have. I think there are plenty of risks. In one aspect, I feel like, what's the point of signing a 31-year-old receiver with some injury issues and is one misstep away from being suspended for a long time, and probably is going to cost you a lot of money and could cost some young guys some valuable reps when you probably are a fringe playoff team. On the other side of my mouth, Steve, I would also say, I think that he could be good for max development. I understand people that can make the case that maybe he wouldn't be, but I think, having a player like that could actually be good for max development and actually really help this team progress and be really competitive, which at the end of the day, Bill wants to be a competitive football team. And I think he would definitely help them in an extremely competitive division.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think having a guy like him that excels at catching balls in contested spaces. I mean, we've seen him do that his entire
career. Yep.
Yeah. And, that just boosts your confidence, because, in the back of your mind, hey, we're facing a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, traditionally a low percentage to convert. But if you put the ball where it needs to go, invariably he's going to come down with it. And that has to be such a confidence boost to whoever his quarterback is, knowing that, he's going to be there and, he's going to come down with the football. And I think it's a snowball effect. When he's on the field, like I mentioned earlier, he's going to draw a lot of coverage to himself. And that's going to leave some of the other guys, the Smith-Schusters, the Kendrick Bournes, guys like that. It's going to leave them not wide open, but it's going to leave them with a lesser coverage person that would, might not be on them, or would be on them. You know what I mean?
Well,
Um,
look at the Bills, for example, a team that the Patriots have had trouble with, the last couple of years. I and I'm not saying I'm not. I don't know. I can't remember if Tre'Davious White stays on one side or if he moves or not. But I'm just using this. This is probably a bad example. I should have used a better one. But whatever. Follow me here. Let's just say a team like the Bills that have a number one corner and a guy like Tre'Davious White is just like, okay, I'm with Hopkins. Well, that does leave a trickle down effect for other guys to go ahead and take care of some matchups. And I think that with Tyquan Thornton, I'm hoping that he's going to be able to emerge this year a little bit in Bill O'Brien's offense, given what he's had, what Bill O'Brien's used in the past, aside from two tight ends, is getting guys like Tyquan Thornton with some long speed, with the ability to get them kind of in these matchups where he can put them in some long routes and really take some shots down the field. And I think Thornton really could thrive in that kind of role. And I think the guy having a number one receiver, forget the Tre'Davious White thing, any team you want, having. Even if Hopkins isn't the all-pro player he was a couple of years ago, he's still a guy that other teams have to game plan for. They have to respect his game, and is he been the fastest or the shiftiest guy ever? No, but he's always been an excellent route runner, great contested catches, some of the best hands in the entire league. And look, I mean, I just think that it could really, really help this team, again, stay competitive with some of these higher explosive offenses that you're going to face. And look, if you want to tell me that you're worried about the locker room, or you don't think it would be good for Mac, or you want to see younger guys get opportunities, I won't necessarily fight you on any of those points. But I also am not against it. So if the team was to say hypothetically give him a 2-year deal for, I don't know what he's going to get, 18 million. I don't know whatever it is, 17 million. I give me a number that he's comfortable with. I wouldn't be totally opposed to it, because I still think that I have questions about whether Kendrick Bourne's going to be here much longer. I'm not saying that I think he's going to be cut. I just feel like, given his personality and how things went last year, I just kind of have my antenna up for him, because I want to see how he kind of gets back in line and how they use him, because they really didn't use him last year and we're all scratching our heads. And and if he continues to be a little bit more mouthy, is that someone that is he going to be around here much longer? I don't know that answer. I don't know if Devontae Parker is going to be here much longer. So it's like, if you want to bring in DeAndre Hopkins so that you can go ahead and, you have Tyquan Thornton and you have Juju Smith-Schuster, but now you can take a guy in the second round next year and kind of develop him, for a little bit before Hopkins, heads out. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I don't know. So
no, and I do think that if the Patriots were to sign Hopkins, the guy out it wouldn't be Bourne. I think it would be Parker, because
I agree.
Their roles are very similar. They're not the exact same player, but the role that they would have in the offense, I think Hopkins' role and Parker's more overlap.
Well, and also think about this too. If you have Hopkins and Parker and Thornton and Bourne and Juju, traditionally your lower, your fifth receiver or your lower running backs, like those guys not only play those positions, they usually also are on special teams. And those guys really don't do special teams. So it's like, I could see Parker being the odd man out, which is why I thought he kind of, was a little red ass with his answer yesterday, saying like, we're focused on us next question, because I feel like he feels like he's on the hot seat if he does come here. That's my opinion.
And absolutely, I think he should. And I, me personally, I wouldn't have asked him about that, because you're asking him, oh, what would you think if the Patriots signed basically a replacement for you?
Right.
Of course he's going to answer that way.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So, that's the only thing that, I don't know how you would word it elsewise, but I mean, if you're Devontae Parker, if they bring in a little tiny fast slot guy, then you're not worried, because that's not what you do. But if you're bringing in a guy with a better skill set and going to play the same role as you, then obviously you have to, you have to be concerned about that. And the fact remains, if they release Parker, they're saving it's either 6.2 or 6.4 million bucks.
Right, which they can put, towards Hopkins if they really
Toward
want to,
Hopkins
and get a better player.
Yeah, and they still have 13 million in available cap space. So now you'd be around 20, million bucks.
And then you're an extension or two or an adjustment or two for having cap space that you need for the rest of the year to do what you need to do. And there you go.
And Joel just popped in with the hypothetical question.
What
would the offense look like if they kept Parker and D-Hop?
I actually mentioned this to Steve on the phone yesterday. And I was saying if they had both of them and Gesicki and Hunter Henry, you're talking about one of the most, deadly red zone jump ball squads in the entire league. For what it's worth, but they did have problems aside from running the ball in the red zone, at times. And now you have a couple of, some big guys who can go up and get the ball. It makes it a little bit easier for Mac when things get tight down there. And but I do think they're a little redundant though, Joel, to be honest. Like, I agree with Steve on that. I would really, let's say Hopkins wasn't in the picture and it's and it's just Parker. I still would prefer Juju, Bourne, and Tyquan to be your top three receivers, and then have Parker kind of mixed in. Because with Parker, I still think he adds value, and I thought last year he had some nice catches at times. But, I still think he's more of a, kind of bring him in and kind of rotate him in. Not he's out there full time. I feel like Juju's going to have a pretty strong role. I'd like to believe that Bourne's going to return to, a little bit more of what we saw him in his first year here, where he was a little bit more active. And I have some high hopes for Tyquan. I just worry about his frame, but we'll get to the receivers a little bit more shortly. I want to get, to breaking down the offense. And greetings to Chris, who says to the two wise men. I'm not sure how wise we are, Chris, but it's always nice to hear from you, my man.
You could get odds on that, Chris.
Yeah, big ones. So let's break down the Patriots offense, Steve. And let's start with number 10, shall we? Let's start with the quarterback and, Bill O'Brien too. And I'm actually excited to see Mac Jones in this offense. And that's kind of weird to say given how messy it got last year. But we all felt from the jump, or I shouldn't say we all, I felt from the jump, and I know many others did as well, that last year's plan for the Patriots was not going to work from an offensive coordinator standpoint. And I know many others share that, okay? And that's not hindsight 2020. You can check the tapes, and it's not really hard to – I think a lot of people were scratching their head being like, is this going to work? I have no illusions to that. With Bill O'Brien having some experience with the Patriots, with a couple of different organizations, both at the collegiate and pro level, as well as Alabama, where he shared some terminology with Mac Jones, I think that you're talking about him blending his two tight end offense together, along with some basic things that and some fundamentals, that the Patriots, have used over the years, and kind of blending some RPOs in and combining those three to put Mac Jones in the best position to succeed. Now, do I think that Mac Jones has the best, arsenal of weapons in the league? No, but I don't think it's a terrible collection. I just don't think they have the shiny new toys, but I still think he has plenty to work with. Certainly enough to be more competitive than they were last year, which I don't think is much, or, I don't think that's saying much. And I'm excited to see what Mac Jones can bring to the table, Steve. I really am. I want to see him thrive. And I want to at least give us the opportunity to fairly evaluate him, because as I pounded the table, and I know many others did as well last year, I felt like that was the worst part about last year, was the offense was such a shit show. Let's just put it lightly. It was such a cluster that we feel like we lost a year of evaluation of your young quarterback. And I feel like that can't happen again. And I feel more confident given this coaching staff that it won't.
Absolutely. I think their best move in free agency was Bill O'Brien. We were kind of hoping for him last year. The only thing we worried about at that time when they didn't get him was, is he going to go to another team as a head coach again? That's still a concern. I mean, that might happen down the road again next year. But bringing O'Brien in, you can already feel the vibe that's emanating from Foxborough, and a lot of the players have talked about it. There's such a level of confidence and positivity coming out,
Right.
and that always sounds a little cliche, but at the same time, after, as you said, what happened last year, the shit show, I think it's much, much more needed than it was, last year. I think, the players have to be confident again. And it starts with your quarterback. And everything I've heard, everything I've seen, the videos, and I've read, is Mac is much more comfortable. He's much more confident. And he's leading the offense. And, one of the things he talked about yesterday, he kept mentioning the toolbox that O'Brien has put in, and that toolbox is the ability to audible at the line of scrimmage,
Which he wants. He said he's been vocal about wanting that control.
Right, and he wasn't given that. And the deal was last year, Patricia told him just run the play that's called. Well, if the defense is lined up perfectly to stop what you're calling, it's going to not go well. And, O'Brien has given him that option to audible again. And it just so happens yesterday, I think it was Phil Perry and Tom Curran that were saying, Patriots lined up. Jones recognized they were coming with all-out blitz. He did a couple of hand signals. Kendrick Bourne cut his route short across the middle, took a quick slant for a touchdown. And that answers two questions. One, the audible worked, and Kendrick Bourne is still a part of this offense.
Right.
So that answered your question. I think he's going to definitely be a part of this offense this year, because I think O'Brien can see, what he can bring to the table. And we saw that in 2021. And last year, he was just the odd man out all season. And then they put him on the field, we're talking about Mac right now. We'll get to the wide receivers. But I think Mac is primed for a much, much better year. And like you said, throw out last year. I think it was an anomaly for the entire offense. And let's worry about 2023. And I think he's going to make a big jump from his rookie season this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to look comfortable. I really do. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, because I do think that you're going to have a tough challenge. But hey, right out of the gate with Philadelphia, Steve, they have a tough defense. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect right away. Usually, we've said this, we've been doing this a long time. We say this all the time. It's going to take probably into week 6 or 7 before the offense starts to kind of look even better and better. But I do think he's going to look comfortable. I do think they're going to try some new things, add some wrinkles. And I do think they're going to try to get the ball out of his hands quickly and put him in, I don't want to say like a Kyle Shanahan offense where it's kind of like more video game for the coordinator and kind of taking the thinking out of it. But that's kind of what I'm thinking they're going to do is, hey, Mac's still going to have to make the right reads, but we're going to make sure that it's quick decisions. And I think that's going to be especially important to do given my questions with tackle, which we'll get to. But, Joel mentions has a really good question that I think has been kind of buzzing around about Bill and Mac's relationship. And I think that I'm sure last year there were some ruffled feathers given, Mac, reportedly reaching out to people at Alabama to try to get some help and to do these things. And I think that went right up Bill's backside. And I don't blame him for that. And I think that Bill probably was a little disappointed in how Mac handled himself. But I also think Bill, put it this way, Bill's not dumb. He knows what he saw, which is why he made the change he did at the coordinator position, on offense, and why, he let his buddy kind of move on, to Philadelphia, actually, to take on a different role. And I don't think that relationship is bad. I just think that, put it this way, I feel like both Bill and Mac are just looking for kind of more earned trust from both sides. I think Mac from Mac's perspective, I think he wants to prove that he's the quarterback that he believes he is, and that he wants the ability. He's like, hey, trust me to make these calls at the line. Like, I know what I'm seeing. I can do this. If I see a defense and I need to check out of it, let me have that ability. And I think Bill wants Mac to show that he's more of a leader, that he can't just throw a tantrum on the sidelines because it's going to cause, rifts between the locker room. And a lot of beat writers that were around the team last year said that the locker room looked a lot more disjointed than in previous years, which is not, which is very atypical of this team. So I think, I don't know what you feel like, Steve. I think the relationship is fine, but I do think there's a lot to be gained on both sides and a lot that needs to be earned.
Right. And to answer the first part of his question, Bill isn't working with Mac or the offense really at all from what we've seen and read, this spring. He's completely turned it over to O'Brien, which tells you, he's giving O'Brien the keys to the car basically, because that's what he used to do with Josh McDaniels. When McDaniels ran the offense, Bill didn't really interact with him very much during the course of a practice, or training camp. He let McDaniels run the show. Of course, if he saw something, during team activities, he would definitely make a mention of it. But
I think that Bill, I'm sure, like, Bill likes to monitor everything, but it's similar to, like you said, similar to Josh. I think he trusts Billy O to run, kind of run things. But even the Patriots Unfiltered crew that was doing a live show, that's done some live shows, we're talking about how Bill O'Brien, I should specify, it was kind of standing off to the side, just kind of calling plays into the headset, and I think he's just I think it actually makes me feel better. I'm sure behind closed doors, because they tape everything at practice, that they go over things. I'm sure behind closed doors, he's correcting people. Mm-hmm. But to me, the fact that he's not like flipping out at people and constantly getting involved, and he feels like, given that there is a little bit of a calmness, I think that should make you feel good as a Patriots fan. I know it's early and I don't want to overreact. Let's see how it looks in training camp, right, Steve? Right. But I the fact that you're not seeing, mass chaos on the field and things are just running as a smooth, regular, operation, I feel like, I know it's not saying much as a professional football team, but given the situation last year, I think that's, more than what you can ask for at this point.
Absolutely. And you mentioned O'Brien on the sideline calling plays in with the headset. They normally don't do that till training camp, and they were already doing it in OTAs.
Maybe they're a little ahead of schedule.
And yeah, I mean, to me, that shows that the players have bought in and they've put the work in, because he's not having to be behind the huddle explaining to everyone how this is going to work and where everyone's supposed to be going. I mean, they know that their responsibilities, and Mac is confident enough where Bill calls it in just like he would in a game, and then they go from there. And right. And that other play I mentioned just a few moments ago, where it was on 11-on-11, the team showed all-out blitz. Mac was able to just discover that, recognize it, better word, and hit Kendrick Bourne for a touchdown. That last year, that would have never happened. Players would have been running into each other. They would have run a play that wouldn't have worked. And, it's just, I think it's a cumulative effort with everyone involved. And I think the confidence level heading into training camp is really high this year. And, when the rubber hits the road and the pads come on, we'll see. I'm sure there'll be a few hiccups here and there, but it just looks like the quarterback position is solid this year.
Yeah, no, I think people should feel pretty good about it. At least, if you're not a huge Mac Jones fan, I feel like you should feel more confident than, the way things went down last year. And look, like I said in the past, even if you're not a big Mac Jones fan, and I'll say this about myself, when we're talking about players that the team drafts that I'm not really a big fan of, and who the hell am I? I'm just giving opinions, right? But the fact of the matter is Mac Jones is your quarterback. Even if you're not a big fan for whatever reason, it would be in the Patriots' best interest, and if you're a Patriots fan, you should want that he does have a really good year this year. Like that, and unless you're so against him that you just feel like he can't be that guy, then you want him to crash and burn. I still don't think they'd get rid of him after this year. I would, that's kind of a conversation for another day, but I still think I don't really get that mentality from some Patriots fans, but I think that you should want him to succeed, and I think that he's going to be put in position to succeed, and I do think he's going to have a much better year. I think he's going to have his best year as a pro. He had 25 throwing touchdowns as a rookie. I think he's going to be closer to 30, and he better be over 30. I mean, that's given the way that even with the teams that they're going to have to face, they're going to be in some high-flying battles. I'm not saying they're going to win them all, but they should be in more competitive games, and they should be closer to 27 than 20, in terms of points. That's really my point. Right now, we're going to step aside, take a quick break, because we still have to get to running backs, receivers, tight ends, and offensive line. So we're going to do that right after this. Okay, and we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Again, Derek Havens, Steve Balestrieri here for PatsFans.com. We are just going to discuss the Patriots offense, breaking it down. We spent the first half of the show, Steve, talking about DeAndre Hopkins rumors, the Bill O'Brien effect, Mac Jones, the passing game kind of in general, but we still have plenty to talk about. So let's get into the running backs, Steve, and we'll move on to the receivers after that. So, from a running back standpoint, Steve, for this Patriots team, I think we all love what Rhamondre Stevenson brings to the table. And I think we have high hopes for him. But as you and I talked about on the phone, as we often do have our side podcasts on our phone calls a couple
about
times
3 times a week.
Yeah, I was gonna say I talk to you more than I talk to my wife. No problem there.
Same here.
So I don't really think we need to say too much about Rhamondre, but like we talked about on the phone yesterday, you do have to be careful that you don't Le'Veon Bell him too much. And what I mean by that is you don't run him into the ground with 300 plus carries or 300 plus touches, I should say, year after year after year after year, because he just won't hold up. So I don't want to focus as much on Stevenson, and that really has no due disrespect to him. It's really all about respect to him. I think he's one of their best players overall, and we know what he can do. But I still want to focus on the guys behind him, Ty Montgomery, the 2 second-year players, Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris, and then J.J. Taylor. You have those 4 guys in the mix. I think probably 3 will stick behind Stevenson, Steve. They'll probably carry 4. J.J. Taylor, to me, is probably the odd man out. If I had to guess right now, Steve, I think that your Ty Montgomery, who got hurt last year, Belichick has mentioned his positional versatility. Pierre Strong has that long speed that he showed off in college, and he's been showing some hands. Kevin Harris, as a Gamecock fan, yourself, Steve, you can appreciate what he does. And I think a lot of people have said, hey, running, we'll see what happens in training camp, because running's not a huge factor in these mini camps, but some guys have kind of shown some things here. I am kind of intrigued with the 2 second-year players, and I don't know what to think about Ty Montgomery, to be honest with you, Steve, because he is a little bit long in the tooth, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and if you can kind of mix and match these guys to kind of give Stevenson a break so he's not limping down, the stretch here of the season like he was last year, I think he'll be all the better for it when, metal hits the road. Rubber hits the road, I should say.
It's funny. We talked about how discombobulated the offense was last year. But the one bright spot in training camp in preseason was Ty Montgomery. I mean, universally, I think everyone thought he had a great training camp, and lo and behold, that very first game against Miami, he scored the Patriots' only touchdown, and that's when he was hurt. So if he's close to being healthy, I think he's going to stick. But to me, I think that the forgotten guy, I think, in all of this is Pierre Strong, because you remember they drafted him pretty highly, and he has that incredible speed, able to catch the ball out of the backfield. And as we know, I mean, the Patriots, when it comes to running backs, guys who catch it out of the backfield, like Kevin Fox, James White, Shane Vereen, those type of players, they basically had that red shirt first season, which Strong pretty much did as well. He didn't make a great impact in year one, but I think they have high hopes for him. And think about it, obvious passing situations. If you can bring in a guy like Strong or Ty Montgomery, that just puts another, weapon in Mac's back pocket that you can utilize and create mismatches. So I really like the running back. I mean, it was disappointing what happened with James Robinson. But we knew that was kind of, it was a low risk type of deal. They obviously had hopes that he was going to recover. But, from what we heard, reports coming out of Foxborough, he wasn't able to practice hardly at all this spring. So that was why, they released him now. And it's a shame because that kid had a ton of potential. But, the guys that they have, I do believe, and Chris said he thinks J.J. Taylor's a goner. I don't think he's going to be gone. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be gone, but he'll.
No, I think he'll hang around.
He'll be on the practice squad. But I like the other guys. As long as they stay healthy, I think they're set because I think Kevin Harris, he's a bruiser. He's that big, short yardage kind of guy between the tackles. And I think with Ramondre and the other, Strong, Montgomery, you have those change of pace guys and you have, obviously pass catching. I like it. I like it. I'm
really intrigued, Steve, with Pierre Strong, and he has a lot of explosiveness, and I think that he'd be a nice change of pace to someone like a Stevenson. And I know I'm not saying he's a for sure thing, but I still think he could be a nice rotational piece on an NFL offense. And let's not forget, he was a very north-south kind of runner in college, and I just looked it up because I knew that it was pretty high. He had 10 touchdowns of over 50 yards in college.
Yeah.
And he ran a 4.37 at the combine. I mean, and it shows up on the field. So if he has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can, Stevenson, I wouldn't say is a slow player at all, but he's not like a burner. But he is a very patient runner. He's strong, excellent balance. Great. He has more wiggle to him than I think people kind of are caught off guard by how much wiggle he has. So, but if you can all of a sudden swap him out, let him get a breather, and all of a sudden bring in someone like Pierre Strong, who's a little bit more of, a speed guy, I think that you could really, really have a nice change of pace thing there. And I still think Kevin Harris will have a role on short term when you need to spell him too, on shorter runs where you need to kind of punch it in, because he has shown that he has the ability to do that. I mean, he had a few nice runs in the preseason last year, I thought. And I know some people made fun of me because I think he averaged like 3 yards a carry. But I just like, sometimes it doesn't have to necessarily result in a huge product in the preseason for you to kind of see something in a player. And I still think Harris, what he showed in college, I still think he has a little bit more to show. I like the two younger guys. I'm still holding my breath on Montgomery because even though he has some good versatility and I do think he could be kind of a chess piece, I don't have a whole lot of hope that he's going to be able to stay healthy at this stage of his career. That's just me.
That'll be something to monitor, but
yeah. But we should move on to receiver, though, Steve, so we can kind of push this along. All right.
Like Chris said, unleash the strong.
Unleash the strong. So let's spend a couple minutes on receiver. We kind of dipped our toe into it already, Steve. With what we talked about off the top. I'm going to spend a second talking about. Devontae Parker, I don't think he's going anywhere, assuming they don't sign Hopkins. I think he's on the team. Tyquan Thornton's not going anywhere. There was the rumor going around that the reason he was out of practice the last few times was because of a soft tissue injury, which I'd never love to hear things like that. And I am worried about his durability. given his frame. So that's concerning. Kendrick Bourne, I really do hope he's a nice piece in this offense because I like what he brings, especially as kind of like that third receiver, or even fourth receiver. I think he can bring something to an NFL team. I know Juju is kind of recovering from a little bit of an injury, which is concerning, but as long as Juju comes to training camp and comes in healthy and stays healthy, then I really won't worry about it. I think that he can, be a nice piece there, Steve. But I'll tell you what, the Trey Nixon, train might finally leave the station unless some of these younger rookies can step up. Because if I just mentioned those four guys, Trey Nixon to me is next in line. Now you have Kayshon Boutte, you have Demario Douglas. There's a couple other guys I think I like lower level guys.
Malik Cunningham has been working out at receiver.
Yep, Malik Cunningham has been kind of doing some receivers, some quarterbacks. He's kind of been all over the place. So unless someone supplants Trey Nixon and Trey Nixon can come in and have a strong training camp, I do think this could be the year Patriots fans have been clamoring for. The Trey Nixon might make that 53. Give me your take on the receivers.
Yeah, who was that guy? I want to say it was about 10 years ago. Everyone would say, this is the year so-and-so is going to break out. And
you also be more specific. I love being a Patriots fan, but we're optimistic.
He was a wide receiver. I'll think of it after the show's over. But anyway, we're just going to focus on the guys that are here, like Bill always says. I think they're good at wide receivers. They're not great. They're not dynamic, but they have enough weapons to be very effective in the Patriots style of offense. And, I've been clamoring for that small, shifty, athletic slot receiver. And I just have a sneaky feeling Demario Douglas is going to be that guy. Not saying he's going to be a huge part of the offense, but I think they're grooming him for that role. We've seen it with Wes Welker and, Julian Edelman. I'm not saying he's going to be one of those guys either, but it's just, that type of player has always worked well in the Patriots offense. I think Malik Cunningham this year might be redshirted practice squad. But I just have that feeling with Douglas. I'm still high on Kendrick Bourne. And I agree with Chris, Professor Patricia, he just didn't utilize him, So the guy, in this group that needs a big jump in year two is Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah, no, he really does. But was it Kenbrell Tompkins you were thinking of?
No.
I did love. Maybe Josh Boyce.
No, it was right around. It was right around the time of Josh Boyce.
I loved. Okay, for one. It
was Taylor something.
Taylor Price out of Ohio.
Taylor Price.
Yeah, Taylor Price out of Ohio because we got Josh Boyce out of TCU.
Yeah.
Kenbrell Tompkins. I can't remember where he went to school, but there was also Jeremy Gallon, who was the receiver out of. Who was the receiver out of Michigan. And then the running back that everyone was crazy about because he was the Olympic one was, I think, Jeff Demps, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I'm going back a ways.
But you remember Tyler Price hung around for like 3 years.
Taylor Price.
Taylor Price, excuse me. And, every year everyone's like, this is the year he's going to bust out. And, he's going to never quite did. Same with Josh Boyce.
Yeah. I would say Price more than Boyce, but yeah, I mean, because Taylor Price was a mid-round pick. I think Boyce was like in the 6th round, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think Boyce was a 4th rounder.
Oh, maybe he was. I don't know, but I love me some Kenbrell Tompkins, and I immediately think of Scott Zolak. With
the price is wrong.
Oh, good. I'm glad that Joel and Chris are participating and they're finding us entertaining, going down the whole 10-year-old rabbit hole, but I would say this too, Steve, I think they're okay at receiver, but one of the reasons I feel better about them at receiver is because of who they have at tight end. And the top 2 tight ends, you have Hunter Henry coming back again for another year, and they're bringing in, Mike Gesicki, who I loved him coming out of the draft, has had some real productive years with Miami. 1-year deal. I really hope that he has a good, solid year. I can't for the life of me think that he's going to produce less than what Jonnu Smith brought to the table as a tremendous swing and miss by the team. And I can't even blame him. I was clamoring for it. So a lot of people have described Mike Gesicki as not really a tight end, as more of a big power slot, kind of big receiver. And they've been moving him all around, even in minicamp. And I could see Bill O'Brien having a lot of fun with a guy like Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne and, Juju Smith-Schuster and Taekwon, and just kind of moving these guys all around and finding mismatches. I think Gesicki is in line for a really good year.
Yeah. And you got to remember, Bill O'Brien recruited him to Penn State. So,
yeah. He did go to Penn State, right? It was Penn State?
Yeah.
By the way, Joel, he did confirm. Thank you for fact checking this. So it was a 4th rounder. I thought it was a 6th rounder, but Price was a 3rd rounder.
Yeah.
So thank you for looking that up. I appreciate that, because that was driving me.
We were waiting for him to break out.
Yep. So I honestly think if I had to guess right now, I think Gesicki. Claire, I hope you're not mad. I know he's kind of a tight end, but I think Gesicki's going to have a better year than Hunter Henry. I think he's going to have a really productive year. And that's not really a knock against Henry. I think Henry's going to be kind of what he is. I think he's going to, catch a couple balls a game. He'll probably catch somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 touchdown passes, and he'll be in the mix. But I think Gesicki, I could see him being a really, really good part of this offense. And
yeah, he has that that ability to be a little bit more dynamic than Hunter.
Sure. I think he's definitely a better athlete. Yeah.
Yeah. I think both of them are very good red zone targets.
Yep.
I think Gesicki, like people say, he's a big wide receiver.
Right.
So, the ability, again, to mix and match against opponents' defenses, I think these guys are primed for a good year.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Hunter Henry's expecting a second kid pretty soon too, if I'm not mistaken. But
I think his wife already had it.
Oh, okay, maybe. I'm not sure.
I'd have to double check.
Yeah, but anyway, so again, I think Hunter's going to have a fine year. I think Gesicki's going to have a really good year. I just see him as a really nice fit in this system, and I'm excited to see what Bill O'Brien does with him. And Steve, let's wrap it up with this. With the offensive line here, because man. I have some questions. I have some concerns. I'm really worried about tackle, but I want to set tackle off to the side really fast because I feel good about the middle of the line. Cole Strange, I know, he had an up and down rookie year. Okay, so some good things. Also was pulled in a couple of games because he was a little overwhelmed. I still think he's going to, have a pretty solid career. I'm not really too worried about him at left guard. David Andrews, we know what he brings to the table. And Mike Onwenu, one of the better guards in the game. I'm still kind of wondering if they're going to extend him or not, but I'm just waiting for the contract extension for Onwenu, Steve. I'm just wondering if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I agree with you. I think they're set interior-wise. You got to remember, too, Cole Strange came from, Chattanooga to the NFL. That's a big jump. So
huge jump. Yeah.
But I thought he was better down the stretch. I thought he started to come into his own a little bit, and they picked up some interior offensive linemen. So I think the interior of the line is pretty much set. Barring major injuries.
How do you feel about the depth of the interior, though? Because, for example, I'm going to list off a couple of guys. Bill Murray, Sidney Sow, Antonio Mafe, Cody Russi, Jake Andrews, James Ferentz, Chasen Hines. I feel like there's a lot. Obviously, they're probably going to keep a couple of those guys. I have a hard time believing Bill Murray's not going to make the team because of how Bill has praised him switching back and forth from offensive line and defensive line. And I really have a lot of high hopes for Sidney Sow. I think he could be a nice player. James Ferentz, I mean, he has photos of Bill. There's no doubt because he just continues to stay year after year. You know, I don't know. He knows where the bodies are buried. James Ferentz, he stumbled on in his rookie year, and then he saw Bill, you know, burying somebody in the backyard, and now he's just established a 10-year career. I'll never understand it, but this is where we're at. You know, I'm not sure who you like as kind of a backup, you know, for the interior. But I certainly have some questions with the depth all across the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think the depth interior-wise is good. I mean, it's tough to evaluate defensive and offensive linemen in the spring because there's no pads on.
Right.
So it's really, I mean, what you're really looking for is their footwork at this point. You know, are the guys showing quick feet? Are they able to adapt and all that?
Are they in shape? You know,
are they in shape? Which is a major problem with the tackle position, which we'll talk about.
In a second.
You know, I'm intrigued to see what the rookies bring to the table, and the first year guys. I mean, Chasen Hines. Now I had his name on the tip of my tongue, and I drew a blank. The kid from,
City Sal, Bill Murray, Tony.
No, a first year guy. They drafted him last year. Andrew Stuber.
Oh, Andrew Stuber. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, you know, what all these guys look like when the pads come on. And I think that'll tell the tale of who's going to be on the 53 man. A couple of them will end up on the practice squad for sure. But it brings us to the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Tackle.
I'm really worried, Steve. I don't think it's necessarily hyperbolic to say this, although I will say it's a little early to sound the alarm. But I think if the offense struggles, I think we could be looking back at this year and saying, man, the tackle position really let them down. Mac was rushed constantly. It looked like they had some things lined up, but they just didn't have enough time to execute what they needed to do. And that's what I'm really worried about.
Exactly. Now, I think, right tackle, they have Connor McDermott, who played pretty well last year after they picked him up. Wasn't great, but he was okay. Riley Reef was, a well-established vet. If he stays on the right side, I'm not as worried about him as much. But if they're forced to move him to the left side where he played earlier in his career, then I'm extremely concerned at that point. Then it comes to Trent Brown. And I mentioned this morning on One Patriot Place. He's counting as $12.25 million against your salary cap. And he can't show up on time. I mean, come on. I mean,
yeah. Now, just for context for some people, that him and his agent said that he had a plane, he was scheduled to fly in on time, and that his plane was canceled because of a hailstorm.
Exactly.
And I would say two things. Why are you waiting until the very last minute? And I don't really think Bill. I think I put it this way: if Trent Brown hadn't established some kind of relationship with the team, I think he would have Adalius Thomas, jettisoned off the roster. I think his key card would not work anymore.
Exactly.
I think that's just inexcusable. I mean, you don't need to be flying in at the last minute.
Right. If you're getting paid $12 million, you take the possibility of something going wrong out of the equation, and you get there a day or two early.
If you have to be there on a Monday, then fly in on a Friday. So if you spend the weekend getting ready to do what you need to do, it's like it's not really that hard.
Hook up with your teammates and whatever. Do what you got to do, but you need to make sure you're there on time. And that hailstorm. Act of God, we all understand that.
Sure.
But it's not like in the middle of the season. Okay, like as we all know, the weather in New England can be fickle in the wintertime. It's not like at 4:00 in the morning, a snowstorm nobody saw coming, dumps a foot of snow, and you're stuck in traffic or behind an accident somewhere. those I can slide a little bit because you don't know, even if you leave early. But this stuff about you knew minicamp was starting on Monday, and you decide that you're going to wait until Sunday to fly in. That's just wrong, especially a guy's getting paid $12 million, And then he shows up. I don't know what's injury related or completely out of shape, but they said he was laboring just in the warm-ups.
Yep.
And you and I have been there a gazillion times and watched the warm-ups never change. And
it's always the same stuff.
It's like a relaxed jog. I mean, they're not sprinting out there, and if he's laboring in warm-ups, that tells me he's not in shape at all.
No. And I think that's been the problem with Trent Brown. It's why the Patriots were able to get him early, because people were, he kind of, his act wears thin. And I think that when you had Brady and you're winning and you have Dante Scarnecchia to kind of help keep him in line, I think those three factors kept him on the rails. And now that they are kind of a middling team, and, you have a first-year off the line coach here, a first-year coach here, and, a guy in Mac Jones that I don't think has earned a lot of respect to some of the veterans, especially ones who are sitting fat and happy because they've been paid multi-million dollars in contracts. I just don't think, put it this way, I just don't think Trent Brown cares that much. And I think at times, he can be dominant. And I think at times, I just don't think he really cares to be out there. I think he's ready to probably be done, but he's just kind of riding it off. And I think he's in no position to be a roster lock, Steve, at all. I would not be. I wouldn't even really. I'm not even sure. I'm sure he will be classified as a surprise cut, but like if Trent Brown was cut tomorrow, would you be like stunned? Like I wouldn't be.
No, not after what happened on Monday.
Yep.
I mean, so mandatory minicamp, he misses completely the first day.
Yep.
The second day, he does warm-ups. He runs one drill, and he's out. I mean,
that's it.
That is worrisome if that's your left tackle who wasn't great the year before.
Now, look, I hope he comes into training camp in good shape and things are good. And, you have Calvin Anderson and Riley Reif and Connor McDermott and Andrew Stuber, and you let them battle it out and see what's going on. And maybe, it's not great, but maybe you have four guys who, they're maybe injury prone or you have a lot of questions about, but you have four guys for two spots. You're going to try to piece it together. You hope maybe someone like a Calvin Anderson kind of steps up and is good, but I just feel like, Steve, this to me is, I sent this to you the other day, is already my biggest need going into next offseason, hands down.
Absolutely. And it will be. I give a lot of credit to Phil Perry on this one. One guy to keep your eye on is Jonah Williams from the Bengals. He was their left tackle last season. They signed Orlando Brown to be the left tackle, and they want to move Williams over to the right side, and he initially requested a trade. He since went back on that, and he was at minicamp. But what if I think if you're the Patriots right now, after seeing how Trent Brown showed up, what if you call up Cincinnati and say, what would it take for you guys to trade us Jonah Williams? He was their left tackle last year.
Yeah, and if you can get him for probably a mid-round pick.
And he's only 25. Okay,
yeah, so if you can get him,
an old guy.
Yeah, and even if he's not great, but at least he's someone who you feel like could come in and do a representative job. At least you have a veteran in Riley Reif who's played right tackle. Calvin Anderson has played both sides, and then I thought McDermott did okay stepping in at times last year. I'm not saying he is a starting tackle in the NFL, but I also think he's a I think he's a serviceable roster guy in the NFL, if that's fair. So I mean, I think he belongs in the league, given what he's seen. So it's like, to me, Steve, I just think there's a lot of questions about this tackle position. And as we move forward and into training camp, when guys are battling and we're looking at who's the starting five, I'm going to be fascinated to see the rotations at tackle, to see what the coaching staff sees, because I think it will be a strong reflection on what's going on behind the scenes in the weight room, who's in shape, who's paying attention, who forget just the winning, the one-on-one reps. But I think that there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the Dante's Inferno. Even though he's not here, we're still going to call it that. The offensive line area in training camp when we get there, next month.
Yeah, I think the start of training camp, you'll see Calvin Anderson taking first team reps at least to start.
Yeah, I don't know which spot, but
I think he's going to be the starting left tackle,
and then Riley Reif at right tackle. If you had to guess right now,
yeah. And
if I had to guess right now, that's who I would say too. And I would say I would not be shocked. Okay, let's finish the show off with this. What percentage? I'm going to give you two different scenarios. One given tackle, and one going. We're going to go full circle back to how we started the show, and this is how we're going to end it. Percentage Trent Brown is cut before training camp even starts. I'm gonna go 25%.
I was gonna say 20 because they can't be happy with him.
No.
To show up like that, be late, and then I think it was Tom Curran said that it was a slap in the face toward Bill.
I think so too.
I mean, to show up like that, you're the starting left tackle after a year where the offense was so bad and the protection of Mac was so bad last year.
Right.
Show up like that for mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's BS. I just think that, put it this way, you talk about culture, you talk about kind of, hey, you know what? Last season was a mess. We're trying to be a competitive team. We have a hard year coming up. I think Bill has got to be kind of wondering the same questions that we are, meaning like from a team building perspective, who are the guys moving forward? Who are we moving forward with? And if you're talking about a team looking forward, not just for this year, but just like the next couple of years, Trent Brown is not part of that team. And so is he worth that headache? If he's going to come in out of shape, not show up on time to mandatory stuff, I don't think it's a huge percentage he's cut before then unless something happens behind the scenes. But, I mean, if he shows up out of shape at training camp, I mean, he's punching his ticket out of here.
Oh, I think he's gone after this year regardless.
Oh, by the end of the year, I'd say 100%. I'll say 99% because there's always a chance. 99% that this is his last year here. I'd say he's got a 50-50 chance of making the roster right now, and I think about a 25% of not even making it to training camp. That's kind of what we're at.
If they can swing a trade with Cincy, then
he's expendable.
He's extremely expendable. And
to answer Joel's question, to trade him, I just don't think he has any value. I just don't think
I think they'd just release him.
Yeah, you're just going to flat out get rid of a guy like that.
So, you bring in a guy like Williams, you still have Calvin Anderson as a swing tackle guy, or, McDermott. I think all of a sudden your tackle position isn't as glaring.
No, it's not great, but it's not as glaring.
No.
You're not like gripping your seat,
No, and they'd still need a younger tackle, but if they swing a trade for Williams, he's only 25. So he's going to be around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And if he works out, all the more better. That's one guy you won't have to worry about, So I don't know. We'll see.
All right, last question for you. I want to wrap up. Percentage Patriots sign DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm going to go a lot higher than I was earlier, but I'm still going to put it low, 33%.
I'm going to go 20%. 20%. So
I mean,
you're going 33. I'm going 20.
Now, if
We'll
we
see.
see a picture of him in a splattered paintball shirt, my number's going up, baby.
I think somewhere he's already actually at the rental car counter at Logan Airport.
And now I'm waiting for somebody to Photoshop that with a paint splattered, paintball shirt.
DeAndre Hopkins playing paintball. If I'm going to check his Instagram story. But anyways, all right, let's wrap it up. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to Patriots 4th and 2. We had a lot of interaction. We had a lot of people viewing today live, which is awesome. We had a lot of people on Facebook. Joel and Chris and a couple others were heavy in the comments, which we appreciate.
Great guys.
We always appreciate everyone who participates, listens, downloads us. Again, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please like, share, leave us a review. Keeps us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. Steve and I are trying to figure out our schedule for the next couple of weeks. It is kind of a slower time. I am going on vacation the first week of July, so that will definitely be taking that week off. But I'm hoping next week we have some news to talk about. If DeAndre Hopkins somehow signs, which I put at a lower percentage chance, like in the next 24, 48 hours, we will put something out quickly. So we won't just sit on that. Next week, we'll try to put a show together. If not, I promise we'll do one the week after that, and then we'll kind of roll through from there. And if you guys have any suggestions on shows that you want us to do over the summer, I know there's not a whole lot going on. There's our Twitter @, please look and, send some ideas our way. If things that you feel like you want to hear more, have us talk more about, we'll break down the new punter, and kicker too. Screw it. Again, for Steve Balestrieri, I'm Derek Havens. Thank you all again so much for listening to this episode of Patriots 4th and 2, the official podcast of PatsFans.com. Have a great day.